Mara had never needed anyone. At 40 years old, the tall orc woman had learned that dependence was a dangerous thing. People promised they would stay, promised they would help, promised they could be trusted, and then, sooner or later, they disappeared. Mara had stopped waiting for promises a long time ago. So she built a life that depended on no one. Her wagon was her home, her workshop, and her livelihood. Behind its heavy wooden walls were tools, blankets, dried food, leather goods, and small items she traded from settlement to settlement. 2 strong brown horses pulled it across the frontier, and Mara knew every inch of the road beneath their hooves. She traveled alone because she preferred it that way. At least, that was what she told herself. Late one autumn afternoon, Mara guided her wagon along a narrow mountain road known as Raven's Pass. The trail was rough, but she had crossed worse places. Dark clouds gathered above the distant peaks, and a cold wind swept through the pines. Mara glanced toward the sky. Wonderful, she muttered. Rain began falling before she could reach the next settlement. Within minutes, the dirt road became a slick mess of mud. Mara tightened her grip on the reins. Come on, girls. Just a little farther. The horses pulled. The wagon groaned. Then one of the wheels sank deep into the mud. Mara was thrown forward as the wagon lurched to a stop. She climbed down, boots sinking into the wet earth. Her expression hardened when she saw the problem. The rear wheel was buried nearly to its axle. Of course. She grabbed a shovel from the side of the wagon and began digging. For nearly half an hour, Mara worked alone. Rain soaked her dark hair and ran down her face. Her arms ached, but she refused to stop. She placed stones beneath the wheel. She pushed. She pulled. Nothing worked. Then she heard hoofbeats. Mara froze. Someone was approaching through the rain. A lone rider appeared between the pine trees. He wore a dark leather coat beneath a weathered brown cloak. A rifle rested across his saddle, and a tomahawk hung at his side. His horse moved calmly through the storm, as though the mountain belonged to him. Mara immediately reached for the knife at her belt. The rider stopped several yards away. I wouldn't try pulling it out that way, he called. Mara narrowed her eyes. I didn't ask. The stranger studied the wagon. No. You didn't. His calm answer irritated her more than an insult would have. Mara planted both hands on her hips. I've handled my own wagon for 20 years. Then you've probably learned that mud doesn't care how experienced you are. She stared at him. The stranger finally introduced himself. Kale. Roadwarden. Mara looked at the badge attached to his coat. She had heard of the Roadwardens, men and women who patrolled the frontier trails, protected travelers, and kept the mountain passes open. I don't need a Roadwarden, she said. Kale glanced toward the darkening sky. Maybe not. Thunder rolled across the mountains. He pointed toward the wagon. But your wagon needs one. Mara followed his gaze. The rain was getting heavier. If the wheel remained buried after sunset, she could be trapped on the mountain for days. For the first time, Mara realized that stubbornness might not be enough to get her home. She looked back at Kale. Fine, she said coldly. You can help. Kale dismounted. But as he approached the wagon, Mara added, and don't mistake this for me needing you. A faint smile appeared on his face. Wouldn't dream of it. Mara didn't know it yet, but the moment Kale stepped into the mud beside her wagon, the solitary life she had carefully built was about to change forever. Kale worked without another word. Mara stood beside the wagon with her arms crossed, watching him examine the buried wheel. Rain continued to fall steadily, turning the road into a river of brown mud. She expected him to struggle. He didn't. The Apache Roadwarden crouched beside the wheel, studying the ground before looking toward the surrounding forest. Then he walked several yards away and returned with 2 thick branches. Hold the horses, he said. Mara frowned. I know how to handle my own horses. Kale looked at her. I didn't say you didn't. Then why tell me? Because I need you to do it. Mara's expression softened for half a second before she quickly looked away. She took the reins. Kale placed the branches beneath the wheel, then used a rope to secure them. He worked efficiently, clearly familiar with broken wagons and terrible roads. Mara couldn't help noticing that he never wasted a movement. Where did you learn that? She asked. Roads. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. Mara almost smiled. Almost. After several minutes, Kale stood. Now. Mara clicked her tongue. The horses pulled. The wagon moved forward a few inches. Again. The horses strained. The wheel climbed onto the branches. With one final groan, the wagon broke free from the mud. Mara immediately released the reins and rushed toward the wheel. She inspected it carefully. No damage. She looked at Kale. Well. Kale raised an eyebrow. Well. You did all right. That's the nicest thing you've said to me. I've known you for less than an hour. Then I'm making excellent progress. Mara stared at him. This time, she couldn't stop herself. A small laugh escaped. Kale noticed. For some reason, that bothered her. She turned away. Don't get comfortable. I wasn't planning to. The rain suddenly became heavier. Lightning flashed across the mountains. Kale looked toward the dark sky. You can't travel tonight. Mara immediately shook her head. I can. No. She glared at him. No. Kale pointed toward the mountain road. The pass will be dangerous after dark. There's a shelter half a mile ahead. You can stay there until morning. I'll stay with my wagon. Then you'll stay with your wagon and freeze. I've survived worse. Kale's expression changed. For the first time, Mara saw something serious behind his calm eyes. I'm sure you have. His words were simple, but they struck somewhere deep inside her. Mara looked away. She hated when people sounded as though they understood her. She climbed onto the wagon and pulled the door open. I'll make my own decision. Kale nodded. That's your right. He turned his horse toward the shelter. Mara watched him ride away. She should have been relieved. Instead, she found herself staring after him. A few minutes later, she noticed the wind becoming colder. The horses shifted nervously. The mountain road ahead had nearly disappeared beneath the darkness. Mara sighed. Fine. She climbed down again. Kale. The Roadwarden stopped. Mara walked toward him. I'm coming to the shelter. Kale smiled. I thought you didn't need anyone. I don't. Of course. I'm only coming because the weather is terrible. Naturally. And because my horses need somewhere dry. Naturally. Mara narrowed her eyes. If you say naturally one more time, I'll leave. Kale turned his horse around. Then I won't say it. They traveled together through the rain. At the shelter, Kale built a fire while Mara prepared food from her wagon. They sat on opposite sides of the flames, maintaining a careful distance. For a while, neither spoke. Then Kale asked, Why do you travel alone? Mara's hand stopped moving. Why do you care? I don't. She looked up. Kale added, I'm just making conversation. Mara stared into the fire. After a long silence, she finally answered. Because people leave. Kale said nothing. Mara continued. They promise they'll stay. Then they find something better. Or easier. Or someone younger. Her voice remained calm, but something painful hid beneath it. So I stopped giving people the chance to disappoint me. Kale looked across the fire. That sounds lonely. Mara's eyes hardened. It's peaceful. Kale nodded slowly. Sometimes those are the same thing. Mara looked at him. For the first time that evening, she had no answer. Outside, the storm raged against the mountain. Inside the small shelter, Mara realized something she didn't want to admit. For the first time in years, she wasn't completely alone. And strangely, she wasn't sure she hated it. Mara woke before sunrise. For several seconds, she lay beneath her blanket, listening to the rain tapping against the wooden roof of the roadside shelter. The storm had weakened during the night, but the mountain wind still howled between the trees. Then she remembered where she was. And who was sleeping near the dying fire. She sat up immediately. Kale was gone. Mara frowned. The Apache Roadwarden had left his rifle leaning against the wall, but his coat was missing. She stepped outside and found him standing beside her wagon. "What are you doing?" Kale turned. "Checking something." Mara walked closer. Her wagon looked exactly as she had left it. Or so she thought. Kale pointed toward the rear wheel. "Did you leave this rope here?" Mara looked down. A thin rope was tied around the wheel. Her eyes narrowed. "No." Kale crouched. The rope was attached to a small metal hook, cleverly hidden beneath the wagon. Mara's expression changed. "What is that?" "Someone wanted your wagon to break." Mara stared at him. "Why?" Kale cut the rope with his knife. "That's what I'm trying to find out." Mara immediately turned toward the wagon. She opened the rear storage compartment and began checking everything inside. Tools. Food. Blankets. Leather goods. Nothing appeared missing. Then she noticed something strange. The wooden floor beneath the storage chest had been disturbed. Mara froze. Kale saw her expression. "What?" "Nothing." She quickly moved the chest. Kale stepped closer. Mara placed one hand on the floorboard. There was a faint scratch around its edge. Someone had opened it. Her heart began beating faster. She grabbed her knife and carefully lifted the board. Beneath it was an old leather-wrapped bundle. Mara stared at it. "I've never seen that before." Kale's eyes narrowed. "You're sure?" "I built this wagon myself." She reached down. Before she could touch the bundle, a rifle shot exploded through the mountain air. Mara ducked. Kale grabbed her arm and pulled her behind the wagon. Another bullet struck the wooden wheel. "The forest!" Kale shouted. Mara drew her knife. "How many?" "At least 3. You can tell that from one shot." Kale looked at her. "I heard 3 horses." Mara glanced toward the trees. She saw nothing. Then a man stepped between the pines. "Leave the wagon." Mara's eyes hardened. Kale raised his rifle. "Walk away." The stranger laughed. "That isn't happening." 2 more men appeared behind him. Mara looked at Kale. "Friends of yours?" "No." "Good." She grabbed a heavy iron tool from the wagon. Kale glanced at her. "What are you doing?" "Helping." The first attacker charged. Kale fired into the ground. The man stopped suddenly. Mara used the distraction to swing the iron tool into his arm. He cried out and dropped his weapon. The second attacker rushed toward her. Mara stepped aside and struck him hard in the chest. He fell backward into the mud. Kale stared at her for half a second. "What?" "Nothing." Then stopped staring. "I didn't realize you fought." Mara tightened her grip. "I told you I've survived worse." The third man fired. Kale shoved Mara aside. The bullet struck his shoulder. Kale. He stumbled. Mara's expression changed instantly. The attackers began retreating into the trees. Kale raised his rifle with his good arm, but Mara grabbed his wrist. Don't. Why? Because they're running. Kale looked at the forest. They'll come back. Mara stared at the place where the men had disappeared. Then we'll be ready. Kale looked at her. We. Mara immediately regretted the word. She stepped away. I meant me. Kale smiled despite the blood staining his coat. Of course. Mara ignored him. She returned to the wagon and pulled out the hidden leather bundle. This time, she opened it. Inside was an old map. And beneath the map was a sealed letter. Mara's hands trembled. She recognized the handwriting. It belonged to her father. A man who had been dead for 15 years. She opened the letter. Only one sentence was written inside. If this reaches Mara, it means they have finally found what I hid. Mara slowly looked toward Kale. The Roadwarden's expression had become serious. Who are they? He asked. Mara looked down at the map. I don't know. Kale stepped closer. Then we'd better find out. Mara folded the letter. She had spent 40 years believing she needed no one. But now someone was hunting her. Someone had sabotaged her wagon. And someone knew about a secret her dead father had taken to the grave. For the first time in her life, Mara realized that surviving alone might not be enough. She looked at Kale's wounded shoulder. Then at the dangerous mountain road ahead. Fine, she said quietly. Kale raised an eyebrow. Fine. Mara tightened her grip on the map. You can come with me. A faint smile crossed Kale's face. Thought you didn't need anyone. Mara glared at him. Don't ruin the moment. Kale nodded. Wouldn't dream of it. Together, they turned toward the road. Neither of them knew where the map would lead. But somewhere beyond the mountains, a dangerous secret was waiting, and the men who wanted it were already coming. The mountain road grew narrower as Mara and Kale continued their journey. For 2 days, they traveled together. Mara drove the wagon while Kale rode ahead, searching for signs of the men who had attacked them. Neither spoke much about the letter. But the secret between them grew heavier with every mile. On the third morning, they stopped beside a clear mountain stream. Kale dismounted and walked toward the water. Mara remained beside the wagon, staring at the old map. She had studied it dozens of times. There were no names written across it. No towns. No roads. Only a red mark near a place called Red Canyon. Mara's father had never mentioned Red Canyon. Not once. She remembered him as a quiet man. He had raised her alone after her mother died. He taught Mara how to repair wagons, hunt, ride, and defend herself. But there had always been things he refused to discuss. Things that made him look over his shoulder whenever strangers entered town. Mara had always assumed he was simply cautious. Now she wasn't so sure. Kale returned. You've been staring at that map for an hour. Mara folded it. I like maps. You've been staring at the same spot. Maybe it's interesting. Kale sat on a fallen log. Mara. She looked at him. He spoke quietly. Those men weren't ordinary thieves. I know. They weren't interested in your horses. I know. They didn't take your supplies. I know. Kale's eyes moved toward the wagon. They wanted something inside it. Mara said nothing. Kale waited. Finally, she pulled out the leather bundle. My father hid this. Kale studied the old map. Do you know what it means? No. Do you know why your father had it? No. Do you know why people are trying to kill you for it? Mara's expression hardened. Obviously not. Kale nodded. Then perhaps we should find out. Mara looked at him. You make that sound easy. I didn't say easy. How do you know we can trust whoever we're looking for? We don't. Then why are you coming? Kale's expression softened. Because you shouldn't have to face armed men alone. Mara immediately looked away. I've been doing exactly that for 40 years. And you've been lucky for 40 years. She turned sharply. I don't believe in luck. Kale smiled faintly. Neither do I. Before Mara could answer, a distant sound echoed through the mountains. Hoofbeats. Kale stood immediately. Hide. Mara grabbed her knife. I'm not hiding. Then stay behind me. I don't take orders. Mara. His voice was different this time. Serious. She looked at him. Kale pointed toward the ridge. 3 riders appeared in the distance. Mara's hand tightened around her knife. They found us. Kale quickly led the horses behind a line of trees. The riders stopped on the ridge. They searched the road. One of them pointed toward the stream. Kale whispered, "Don't move." Mara crouched beside him. For several minutes, neither breathed loudly. Then the riders moved on. Mara slowly exhaled. Kale looked at her. Still think we should travel alone? Mara glared. Yes. Kale almost laughed. They waited until the riders disappeared. Then they continued toward Red Canyon. By sunset, they reached an abandoned mining camp. The buildings were empty, but one structure remained standing. A small wooden cabin. Kale entered first. Mara followed. Inside, they found an old table covered in dust. Kale noticed something carved into the wall. A symbol. Mara stepped closer. Her eyes widened. She recognized it. My father's mark. Kale looked at her. Are you sure? Mara touched the carving. He used this symbol on everything he owned. She examined the wall. Then she noticed a loose wooden plank. Mara pulled it away. Behind it was a narrow compartment. Inside sat a small metal box. Her hands trembled as she opened it. There was another letter. And a faded photograph. Mara stared at the photograph. Her father stood beside several men. One of them was wearing the badge of a Roadwarden. Kale took the photograph. His face suddenly changed. What? Mara looked at him. Kale pointed to the man beside her father. I know him. Mara's heart stopped. Who is he? Kale stared at the photograph. His name was Elias Vane. And? He was a Roadwarden. Mara waited. Kale slowly continued. He disappeared 20 years ago. Mara looked down at the letter. She opened it. The words inside made her blood run cold. Her father had been helping a group of Roadwardens protect settlers from a powerful land baron who wanted to seize their land. The evidence against the land baron had been hidden somewhere in Red Canyon. The map was the key. And Mara had unknowingly carried it for 15 years. Kale looked at her. Your father wasn't just hiding a secret. Mara's eyes lifted. He was protecting people. Kale nodded. And now, whoever wanted that evidence has realized you're carrying the key. Silence filled the cabin. Mara slowly folded the letter. Then we go to Red Canyon. Kale looked at her wounded shoulder. You don't have to. Mara stared at him. Don't tell me what I have to do. I wasn't. Good. Kale stepped closer. I was going to say you don't have to do it alone. Mara froze. Those words struck deeper than she expected. For 40 years, she had believed accepting help meant becoming weak. But Kale wasn't asking her to surrender her independence. He was simply offering to stand beside her. Mara looked toward the dark mountains. Then she quietly said, "Fine." Kale smiled. "That's becoming your favorite word." Mara gave him a warning look. "Don't push your luck." But for the first time, there was warmth in her voice. Outside, the wind howled through the abandoned camp. Far away, hidden beyond the mountains, Red Canyon waited. And somewhere in that canyon was the truth about Mara's father, and the reason powerful men were willing to kill to keep that truth buried. Red Canyon appeared just after sunrise. Mara had imagined it many times while studying her father's map, but nothing had prepared her for the sight before her. The canyon stretched between towering red cliffs, their faces glowing beneath the morning sun. A narrow trail wound through the rocks before disappearing into the shadows below. Kale stopped his horse. "This is it." Mara looked at the map. The red mark matched the shape of the canyon perfectly. She folded the map and placed it inside her coat. "Then we find what my father hid." Kale looked toward the cliffs. "Not yet." Mara frowned. "Why?" He pointed toward the ground. "Horse tracks. Fresh ones." Mara dismounted. "How many?" "Too many." She followed the tracks with her eyes. "They're waiting for us." Kale nodded. Mara reached for her rifle. "Then let's not disappoint them." Kale gave her a sideways glance. "You're enjoying this." "I'm not." "You look like you are." Mara ignored him. Together, they moved into the canyon. The deeper they went, the quieter it became. No birds. No wind. Nothing but the sound of their horses' hooves against the stone. Mara felt something was wrong. Then Kale suddenly raised his hand. "Stop." Mara froze. A rope stretched across the trail. A trap. Kale dismounted and carefully cut it. Mara looked around. "They know we're here." "Yes." "Then why haven't they attacked?" Kale's expression hardened. "Because they're waiting for the right moment." A rifle cracked. The bullet struck the rock beside Mara's head. "Down." Kale grabbed her and pulled her behind a boulder. More gunshots echoed through the canyon. Mara drew her rifle. "How many?" "At least 6. 6. Kale looked at her. "Maybe more." Mara sighed. "Of course." Kale almost smiled. "You're remarkably calm." "I'm angry." "That's different." Mara fired toward the ridge. A man shouted. "One less." Kale looked impressed. "Remind me never to make you angry." "You're learning." They fought their way deeper into the canyon. The attackers had chosen their positions carefully, firing from the cliffs and forcing Mara and Kale toward the center. But the two had become an unexpected team. Kale watched the high ground. Mara watched the shadows. When Kale moved, Mara covered him. When Mara advanced, Kale protected her. They barely needed words. Then a gunshot rang out. Kale staggered. Mara's heart stopped. "Kale." He fell to one knee. Blood spread across his shoulder. Mara rushed toward him. "I'm fine." "You're bleeding." "I noticed." "Sit down." "Mara." "Sit." Something in her voice made him obey. She tore a strip of cloth from her sleeve and pressed it against the wound. Kale winced. "You're very gentle. Keep talking and I'll make it worse." He smiled. "You were worried." Mara's hands froze. "No. You shouted my name." "Anyone would." "Not like that." Mara looked into his eyes. For one dangerous moment, neither spoke. Then another shot shattered the silence. Mara immediately turned. The leader of the attackers stepped from behind a rock. He was an older man wearing an expensive black coat. He smiled. Give me the map. Mara stood. Go to hell. The man's smile disappeared. Your father said the same thing. Mara's blood ran cold. You knew my father? The man laughed. I knew him very well. Mara raised her rifle. Then you know what happens next. The man motioned to his men. Kill them. The canyon erupted. Mara fired. Kale, despite his injury, raised his rifle and returned fire. One by one, the attackers fell back. Mara moved quickly between the rocks. She reached the leader. He tried to escape. Mara grabbed him by the coat. Where is it? He stared at her. What? The evidence. His expression changed. Mara realized she was right. He knew where it was. Before he could answer, Kale appeared behind him. Tell us. The man laughed. You think exposing the truth will change anything? Kale stepped closer. Maybe not. Mara tightened her grip. But it will give the dead a voice. The man's smile vanished. He finally told them. The evidence was hidden beneath an old stone marker at the far end of the canyon. Mara and Kale hurried there. Behind the marker, they discovered a sealed metal container. Inside were documents proving that the land baron had stolen thousands of acres from settlers through violence and corruption. There were also names. Roadwardens. Officials. Judges. People who had helped him. Mara stared at the documents. My father died protecting this. Kale stood beside her. He believed someone would finish what he started. Mara looked at him. Someone like me? Kale shook his head. Someone strong enough to carry it. Mara looked down at the evidence. For years, she had believed her father's greatest lesson was to survive alone. Now she understood. He had taught her how to survive so she could protect something greater than herself. Suddenly, Kale stumbled. Mara caught him. You're losing too much blood. I'm fine. You're a terrible liar. She helped him sit against the rock. Kale looked at her. You should leave. Mara stared. What? You have the evidence. Take it to the authorities. And you? I'll manage. Mara's expression hardened. No. Kale blinked. No. Mara shook her head. I'm not leaving you here. You said you didn't need anyone. Mara looked at him. I don't. Then she gently tightened the bandage around his shoulder. But I choose you. Kale went silent. Mara realized what she had said. For once, she didn't take it back. The woman who had spent 40 years refusing to depend on anyone had finally made a choice. Not because she was weak. Not because she needed saving. But because, for the first time, she had found someone worth staying for. And as the sun began to set over Red Canyon, Mara knew the greatest danger was behind them. But the hardest journey was still ahead. Because soon she would have to decide whether to return to the solitary life she had always known, or build a new one with the Apache Roadwarden who had somehow found his way through the walls around her heart. The journey back from Red Canyon was quieter than the one that had brought them there. The evidence was safely hidden inside Mara's wagon, wrapped in oilskin and locked beneath the floorboards. The men who had chased them were gone, and the land baron's crimes would soon be exposed. But Mara couldn't stop thinking about something else. Kale. The Roadwarden's shoulder was healing, though he still insisted the wound was nothing serious. Mara didn't believe him. Every morning, she changed his bandage. Every evening, she made sure he ate. She told herself it was practical. Kale never argued. But sometimes Mara caught him watching her with that quiet smile. And every time, she looked away. After several days, they reached the small frontier settlement where Kale was stationed. The Roadwarden's cabin stood at the edge of town, surrounded by tall pine trees. It was simple, sturdy, and peaceful. Mara stopped her wagon. Kale dismounted. "This is where I leave you." Mara stared at him. "What?" Kale looked toward the cabin. "My duty is here." Mara glanced down the road. "And mine is somewhere else." "Probably." For some reason, that answer hurt. Mara climbed down from the wagon. Kale walked toward her. "You'll be fine." Mara folded her arms. "I know. You've survived worse." "I know. You'll probably never need anyone." Mara looked at him. "Probably not." Kale smiled. Then he turned away. Mara watched him walk toward the cabin. 1 step. 2. 3. Her chest tightened. She had spent 40 years building a life where no one could leave her. Now she had found someone she didn't want to lose. "Kale." He stopped. Mara stood beside her wagon. She didn't know what to say. The words felt strange in her mouth. "I have a proposition." Kale turned around. "A proposition?" Mara nodded. "You need a wagon." Kale raised an eyebrow. "I have a horse." "That's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" Mara took a breath. "I travel the frontier. You protect the roads." Kale slowly smiled. "Go on. We could travel together." Kale's smile faded into something more serious. "Together?" Mara nodded. "But I want to make something clear. I'm listening. I don't need a protector. I know. I don't need someone to tell me what to do. I know. I don't need someone to rescue me." Kale stepped closer. "I know." Mara's voice softened. "But I wouldn't mind having someone beside me." Kale stared at her. For a moment, the entire world seemed silent. Then he smiled. "That sounds like a pretty good proposition." Mara's heart beat faster. "Don't make me regret it." "I'll try. Try harder." Kale laughed. Mara turned toward the wagon. "There's one more thing." "What?" She looked over her shoulder. "You'll have to learn how to drive." Kale looked horrified. "I thought you said I was supposed to be beside you." "You are. Not behind the reins." "Exactly." Kale shook his head. Mara climbed onto the wagon seat. For the first time in years, she smiled without forcing it. Kale mounted his horse and rode beside her. The wagon began moving down the frontier road. Mara looked ahead. She had once believed strength meant never needing another person. Now she understood something different. Strength was knowing you could survive alone, and still choosing to let someone walk beside you. She glanced toward Kale. He was watching the road ahead, his dark hair moving in the morning wind. "Kale." "Yes." "Thank you." He looked at her. "For what?" Mara thought about the muddy road where they had first met. About the storm. The attack. Her father's secret. And the man who had never once tried to control her. "For helping me when I didn't ask." Kale smiled. "You were going to be stuck in that mud forever." Mara laughed. "Don't ruin a serious moment." "Sorry." They continued down the road. Behind them was the life Mara had built alone. Ahead was something unknown. Something frightening. Something she could not control. And for the first time in 40 years, Mara wasn't afraid of that. The orc woman who had once declared she needed no one had not become weaker. She had simply discovered that there was a difference between needing someone and choosing someone. Mara chose Kale. And Kale chose her. Together, they traveled beneath the endless frontier sky, their wagon rolling toward whatever waited beyond the next mountain. There would be danger. There would be arguments. There would be storms. But there would also be laughter around campfires, quiet mornings on the trail, and two stubborn hearts learning how to share a road. And somewhere along that winding path, Mara finally found something she had never realized she was searching for. Not someone to save her. Not someone to complete her. But someone who could walk beside her. Without ever asking her to stop being the strong woman she had always been.